Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Propagandacast Addendum. Things I'd like to see in Company of Heroes. With me, a host, Imperial Dane. Slightly veering off. I'm not going to talk about things I want to see in a future company. I want to talk about something I want to see in this company. It's sparked by a discussion I've recently had with Fortune about the wehrmacht. And it's only one I've actually been thought about many times, in the last year. So on, as we've seen more factions being added, is something that's been more and more pressing on my mind. And so I've thought rather, well, I've got this new series I've started up. Might as well utilize that before I forget about it again, because it can be a bit sort of forgotten there. What am I talking about is specifically the fact that Wehrmacht is starting to feel rather outdated in comparison to most of the other new factions. How so, do you ask, Imperial Dane? How so? Do you ask me, that is? Well, here's the thing. If you sort of consider a lot of the newer factions, they have a lot of sort of specific things going on in particular in terms of taking up, it's say, in particular for the Allied factions, a lot neater, a lot simpler, and it rough up a lot more. For example, take care of the Brits. Obviously it's not going to be so much apparent here, but for example, you get artillery with every tech. Obviously, the artillery is not super good, but it is there and it can be utilized, and some players can actually use it rather well. And further on, once you hit the third tier, again, you actually get access then to further upgrades, sort of a tier 3.5, but still one that then actually adds bonuses to your units, upgrades even. And that's quite something else. Similarly, the Americans rather some function the same again. You just take up, get the building at the same time, by the way, and then you get 3 units to go along with it. That's quite a lot there. And now consider the Wehrmacht tier. You take up, but you don't really get anything out except, unlock rough grenades, and that's about it. And then it just slowly goes on like that. It's just basically resources for the most part going out the window. Then you get the option of building the building. You have to spend resources, time, and management on that. So again, it's a very much more ponderous sort of situation there. And in particular because, well, the Wehrmacht's really the only one with an actual 4-tier structure sort of linearly. Every other faction, pretty much, can go 1 or 2. In the case of the British, they only got 3. But again, it's very easy straight, 1, 2, 3, and they're there, in particular the second tier is extremely cheap and again quick to get up. You can even call them 1.5 if you want to be cheeky, in which case this is 2.5, and then again the final bit is 3. And similarly the Soviets really after the change and they had 2, but now they're based up to 3 really as well. In that sense, again, the Wehrmacht rather is the only one standing behind with 4 tiers. And again, this is pretty much the Wehrmacht, more or less to a large extent, the same function structure from the first companies, where again, they were also the only faction, really, with 4 tiers. Of course, there are still some large differences there. For example, they had a lot more under building them, particularly since, again, they more or less was also the one with the smaller squad. For example, well, smaller, the Panzer had smaller, but they also had a lot more firepower for them, plus some other advantages. But for example, here, the Wehrmacht, had the Kampfkraft Center ensuring veterancy for units bought, in a sense, but also meant, if you suffered a full squad wipe, which the Wehrmacht was quite liable towards, it wouldn't hurt you as much, plus medic bunkers provided you with another element to sort of help against attrition underpinning units. Of course, ultimately together they rather led to some issues, partly due to the veterancy, and obviously, that could be another excellent video there just on veteran what I like to see. What I don't like to see, survivability is one of them. But that's another entirely discussion. The thing is, though, it's very much built into the Wehrmacht. And again, they've rather brought over this structure without those things underpinning it, but in fact, further exacerbated some of the weakness. Again, the smaller squad sizes. Factoring also that way, they had some elite units right at the end there, the Knights Cross Soldiers, and they're not here. And in fact, we've sort of looked currently at the Wehrmacht. There's sort of 2 problematic periods, if you will. Tier 2 and Tier 4. Tier 2 is essentially, and if you sort of look at it its own way, it's alright. The problem is basically, once you hit Tier 2, the Brits, for example, already hit it. The Americans could hit it pretty quickly. I think usually go a captain, though they could also, of course, go for the Legion, probably more after the patch, which, we'll hit soon. And, also the Search, can go for the Tank Battalion Command. And here's the thing, all of those can pretty handily counter Tier 2 for the Wehrmacht. In particular, the 2.5 tech tends to be sort of a bit of reliability in that sense, quickly blown to bits if you're not careful. So in that sense, there's a bit of a problem there. Again, it's usually one of the bigger weaknesses of the Wehrmacht, alongside, the fact, again, they can easily get suffered huge wipes, and the Wehrmacht is very much vulnerable to that, in particular once they got units with veterancy. Quickly wiped, and then they're like, oh, shite. It's one of the things where the match can very quickly turn against the Wehrmacht, and the Wehrmacht can struggle to get back. into the game quite severely, unlike other factions who do have more options for sort of coming back, because they're not quite so dependent on just sort of swinging back into the game like the wehrmacht and sort of maintaining a lead very strongly. So that's a bit of a problem. And then, of course, you have the fourth tier again, very expensive to get to, and then there's just not much. And that's a bit the problem with the tier 4. It's there, but you don't rush towards it. You don't really see any players rush towards it. And if you do, they tend to end up losing. I mean, I've seen Joe go for one of the best players in Company News too, and he just, flummoxes with it. He can't, get anywhere with it because it's just not very good. I mean, the Sturmpanzer is getting slightly buffed. It's being made slightly cheaper overall, but even then, the Sturmpanzer is a bit, why go for that? If we could go for 2 Panzer IVs, we'll probably pack a lot more punch than the Sturmpanzer, plus be able to deal with armor better. And the Panther, again, why would it go for that? We'd go for several Panzer IVs, several Stugs. Since the Panther is, well, not really heavy on firepower. It's got a lot of durability, but if it can't deal the firepower, it's a bit of limited utility. And that's basically the problem. And if you compare with the Comet, which again is very similar to the Panther, except with a few differences. A, it shoots faster, is more easily accessible, and, it can actually deal with infantry. The Panther can't, which again limits a bit what it can do compared to a Panzer IV. And again, if you get several Panzer IVs, which can then also deliver far more firepower because they have a high rate of fire, the Panther again sort of ends up being a bit of a dirt unit. There's the Panzerwerfer, which you'll see some players go for, but again, it lacks oomph. I mean, overall, the fourth tier for the Wehrmacht is just sort of a dead end for all intents and purposes. It just doesn't need anywhere that tier 3 can't generally do better, well supported by tier 2. And that's usually what you'd call a bit of a problem. Again, a bit of a dead end for the Wehrmacht. I mean, it can go there, but it just sort of doesn't need to anything. I mean, you can get 3 Stugs for the same price of a Panther, and those 3 Stugs will easily outperform the Panther in terms of dealing with armor and infantry. So, why would you go for the Panther again? It lacks sort of broadness and purpose, but I also think, overall they just need to, figure out what they need to do with it. It's sort of a heavy tank. They say the Panther was a medium tank with severe reliability problems. And it's not quite that. I mean, the Tiger's a heavy tank, overall, if you had to go for either of those, the Tiger is going to be your best bet because, well, it can handle infantry better than the Panther. Has a high rate of fire as well, which really makes it superior to the Panther in many ways. Sure, it's more expensive. You can only get one, but, get a Tiger supported with up to your 3 units, and you're generally much better off than you say ever able to get 2 Panthers. Again, that's a bit the problem, and the Panther just lacks punch. So if you sort of look at that, I would actually suggest, overhauling the Panther. My personal suggestion would be lower its health, give it some AoE, but also lower its cost. I mean, they produce close to 6,000 Panzer versus 5,000. And, they have high reliability problems. So have it be a bit reflected like that. Not make it Panzer IV cheap, but at least a bit cheaper than it currently is. But again, make it more vulnerable, but also get a bit more firepower. That way, the Panther might see a bit more use because, again, there's a bit more chance of A, getting it more speedily out of the field, but also having a bit more of an impact on the enemy. Whereas, in most cases, if I'm an allied player and I see a Wehrmacht player go for a Panther, I can pretty much go, well, I've won because that's resource they can have used earlier on hitting me sooner with a lot more potency, in particular versus my infantry, than the Panther. That's usually not how I'm supposed to be thinking if I'm an allied player. Usually I'm supposed to go, oh shit, Panther. Problem is, I won't go, oh shit, it's a Panther, because it's a Panther. I mean, that's really just the most telling way I can sort of describe the Panther. I don't go, oh no, oh dear. I just go, well, lucky me, he didn't go for a Panzer IV sooner. And 2 of them, a bunch of Stugs. And really, this tier 3 is so far more threatening than the tier 4. And so in that sense, they need to look at the Panther, but I also think they need to look into a bit on another issue, which again is the infantry. So my thought is they're basically looking a bit at the Brits, that tier 4 for the Wehrmacht will then, as the heavy building, the heavy Panzer Corps, will actually unlock a series of upgrades for some of the infantry. Specifically, I'm thinking the Pioneers and the Panzergrenadiers. I don't want to encourage more Grenadier spam, but so what am I thinking for the Pioneers? Well, for the Pioneers, I'd figure an assault kit. Basically, upgraded to PPH-41 submachine guns since the Germans converted about 1 million or so of them to use German ammunition. They caught a lot of them. Upgrades with grenades, regular grenades and smoke grenades, so they're proper assault Pioneers. And by Jove, if Pioneers in Stalingrad, the 1993 movie, not that Russian pillocks, can use them. Sure as hell these pioneers can do, and again that would suddenly make them a lot more menacing. Suddenly also give the Wehrmacht, even if they've suffered some losses, they have a way of sort of quickly building up the ranks with some more offensive troops to push back. I mean, obviously that would be the only thing against the panzer grenadiers. What would I do with the panzer grenadiers? One option would be, unlocking infrared assault rifles. Another option, as I just discussed with a friend, was basically to throw in a light machine gun with them, sort of like the Orbital gun. Yes, they'd be mixed in with assault rifles in this case, and obviously not the Orbital guns, Kar-98Ks, and of course they wouldn't have all the veterancy, and the light machine gun for them, but she was still one they could fire on the move like the Orbital gun. I mean, that would certainly increase the damage model, because the thing is, if we sort of, see veterans of 3 panzer gunners go say up there's a veterans of 3 rifle squad with double VARs, the panzer gunners are generally not kind of fared too well. And again, in some sense, they're manpower-wise more expensive to get than the riflemen. So, in that sense, making an upgrade that way for the panzer grenadiers would also give them a bit more utility in the later game, make them a bit more of an imposing unit again. All of a sudden, Wehrmacht Tier 4 is suddenly a much more imposing prospect. All of a sudden, you're not so keen on also just hanging back, going for your biggest. You want to pressure them into, for example, going to Tier 3. You want to delay their Tier 4. So all of a sudden, again, that would also change the gameplay a bit more, because, again, currently, a lot of American players can just sit back going for a Pershing. There's not really going to be a huge threat, whereas all of a sudden, there's actually the threat of better Panthers and upgraded Wehrmacht infantry. All of a sudden, again, strategic imperatives would change a bit. And again, it's not like it's going to be super easy going for the Wehrmacht Tier 4 anyways. I mean, compared with the Brits who can, for example, hit Tier 3 in 10 minutes, get a Cromwell up by 10 minutes. A Wehrmacht, player wanting to rush a pack of Panzer 4 is going to be lucky if they can get out at 12 minutes, for example. So even then, a heavy Panzer Corps rush is still going to be bloody hell as difficult to pull off. But if you at least then make sure it has some impact, it will be a lot more worth it. And will at least somewhat, again, sort of fix the issue again, which is Wehrmacht being really susceptible into vibes and some other things there. So I think, again, that would be a good move. And again, they would be expensive, these upgrades, at least for the Panzer Grenadiers. Storm Pioneers, probably 60 munitions. Again, the grenades would also suck up munitions. So that'd be something there as well. But overall, I think, that would be, a very nice idea. Again, that would, work out quite nicely for the Wehrmacht. Again, give them a bit more reason. Again, give the Wehrmacht Tier 4 more reason. Because, again, currently, I just feel like it's for the most part a dead end. I mean, I see some players go for it. A very few amount of them will succeed, and most of them won't, because it's just a dead end. So again, it's really my opinion there. And of course, you talked about Tier 4 as well, Dane. Yes, I did. What would you suggest there? I mean, really, there's not really a lot of solutions. One would be unlocking a Pack 40 upgrade for the half-tech, just something to more mobily deal with the threats. So that probably one of the more easiest to implement. Another one would be a Marder, I guess, sort of unlocked as an upgrade. And finally, as opposed to Panther 3, a light tank of them sort of take it on, but make it a bit more expensive than the other light tanks, of course, require a bit more. So if you want to go for the half-track others, you have to sacrifice then your movement towards Tier 3 and Tier 4, which again will actually hurt the Wehrmacht quite a bit. So again, that could be another, little win there against the Germans. But overall, that's really, again, sort of how, feel like they could just, polish the Wehrmacht a bit more, give them a bit more, because, again, currently versus the more sleeker, newer, allied faction, again, didn't, get hurt by the fact, again, that THQ by the time, coming to saying basically going under, rushing things ahead, forced them to go for a rather, older design here, and with not a lot of new ideas, again, facing off against a lot of news and more interesting ideas, rather struggling, falling behind. So again, that would give them, I think, a bit more of a fresh feeling and, make them a bit more interesting. And also, a bit less stressful to play, because that's also one of the things with the Wehrmacht compared to every other faction. Playing the Wehrmacht is a lot more stressful. And also, generally, the one I hear the most Wehrmacht players complain, most players complain about on the higher rank, I think, is just Wehrmacht tends to be, pretty tough sort of going. I mean, one mistake then, you can usually cost you the entire game. So that's a little thing there, at least again, I would say, could be looked into. That's not to say, maybe the search also can do with a few extra freshness, but at least they have more work done on them than the Wehrmacht has in, the last many years. And again, you just only recently got the Wehrmacht run grenade buffed. And that's after me, I think, rather making a lot of fuss about it. So again, I do think, that would be something that'd be really nice if Relic were to look into. Again, I'd rather try, go for the most modest proposals. And again, a Panther Fleet's actually asking for a lot, because that's a new unit and everything. But, well, one could hope. But again, the whole at least upgrade scheme here for the end should be more easy to implement. Plus, buffing, making the Panther a bit more worth it again. A bit more reasonable, I think, a bit more within the realm of the possible for Relic with the resources. So that would rather, again, be my suggestions there. I mean, again, it might be silly, again, probably people will be disagreeing, but again, I rather feel like, the Wehrmacht needs something. I mean, the funny thing is, also, you just look at the older concept art for the Wehrmacht, and I'll link some in the video description. I mean, yeah, I just saw some interesting ideas. There are light machine gun teams, tank hunter teams, and so on. They just, in the end, not quite there, and they basically recycled the heavy grenadiers from the Panzer Elite, model, and just reskinned it. For example, there's a clear indication there that they were sort of a bit rushing through the Wehrmacht. Another sign is basically, once they got the Oberkommando West around, they could actually replace the Panzer IV model with a newer, more fancy one. So, I mean, again, the Wehrmacht does suffer a bit under just, being a bit rushed in a sense as well. Also, I think also a bit design-wise. And again, I think, they need something a bit extra. They need, some juice back in them. Something so they don't quite feel as, left behind and old and musty. Like from an older era and just not quite fitting into the game fully. And it's not to say, again, the Wehrmacht is bad, but it does feel a lot more locked in. And again, we essentially have a tier, which again is completely a dead end, which is usually a bad thing, in my opinion. So I think that rather covers it again. I mean, obviously, I'm aware this probably won't happen, but if again, we actually get a discussion about it, actually get people asking Relic about it, maybe, then actually watching this video and sort of going, well, who knows what could happen? I mean, as long as we're being civil about it, asking them nicely, asking, why not Relic? Why can't you just, at least do some of the fixes to the Heavy Panzer Corps? Who knows what could happen? We might actually just get something, and slightly more interesting Wehrmacht that's less, tier 3, Tigers, and if the player plays really poorly and has to go for crutch play, Stugis. And of course, you might ask, what about the Stugi? Well, I suppose in theory, they could replace it with a Stummel half-track, which is basically a 251 with this low velocity and 5mm gun, which, isn't quite as durable as a Stugi, which, would be nice. So, yeah, there you go, I think. There you go. Bit of a topic again, something again I've been pondering for long ages. I've been sort of trying to figure out how to do this, how to make the Wehrmacht, nice in a manner which is A, cost efficient, I suppose, but also B, not likely to just result in something going really horribly wrong. And I think, again, sort of hiding a few upgrades here, making the Panther a bit more interesting, a bit more digestible for the Wehrmacht commander. Again, you could see a bit more life there. And if you're sort of going to, want a really silly suggestion, replace your Tiger Ace with a King Tiger, drop the resource thing there, just, have it at 17 command points, but again, just make it expensive, and sort of, call in there and keep it at three ranks there. I mean, that could also be a fun one. Maybe have it require having the Heavy Panzer Corps as well, before you can call it in instead. So, there you go. Rather this little video here with my thoughts again on the Wehrmacht. What I'd like to see just, feel a bit on the same line as some of the newer factions, again, with all their fancy new ideas, fancy new design, fancy cool stuff. Again, whether they're actually just kind of like, every unit has the same bloody veterans one ability, nothing there to share, and so on. So if you liked it again, like it, share it, send it to your friends, let Relic know, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, their forums, in a sensible, reasonable, and civilized manner, of course. If you're being an arse about it, they're not likely to take it very seriously. If you're being nice and friendly, again, they're probably going to be more likely to take it seriously and, consider it at the very least. Again, I know it's probably not going to happen, but again, a discussion about it could be interesting, I think, fun. And of course, you don't have to agree with my suggestions, as long as you perhaps just agree that, something is needed. Again, what I'm putting out here is suggestions for maybe just some kind of idea there. So anyways, thank you all for joining in. Again, if you liked it, subscribe, share, like it, and so on. This is Imperial Dean signing off for another, day. More exciting videos to come, of course. Cheers, everybody.